Amtrak 501. Emergency, emergency, emergency. We are on the ground.
Is everybody okay?
I'm still figuring that out. We got cars everywhere and down onto the highway.
That was the distress call after an Amtrak train derailed in Washington state yesterday, killing at least 3 people and injuring dozens of others. Investigators today say the train was going 80 miles an hour on a stretch of track that has a speed limit of just 30. That's putting the spotlight on something called positive train control, or PTC. That's a high-tech system that can automatically slow a train down if it's traveling at a dangerous speed. It became a big issue after the Metro North crash in Spuyten Duyvil that killed 4 people in 2013. That train was also cruising along at more than 80 in a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone. There's also a similar speed-related Amtrak crash near Philadelphia a couple of years ago. In 2008, the federal government first mandated PTC for train systems, but they kept extending the deadline as railroads didn't or couldn't comply. Now, Metro North has until the end of next year to put the system in, but it's expected to miss that deadline too. President Trump didn't waste any time chiming in about yesterday's crash in Washington. He tweeted this out right after it happened. Quote, "The train accident that just occurred in DuPont, Washington shows more than ever why our soon-to-be submitted infrastructure plan must be approved quickly. $7 trillion spent in the Middle East while our roads, bridges, tunnels, railways, and more crumble. Not for long." The internet was blowing up with criticism of the president after that one. Many people wondering why it's okay to talk policy immediately after a train disaster, but not after another kind of disaster like a mass shooting. David Korn from Mother Jones was one of them. I'll read his tweet for you. "We can't talk about gun safety measures after a massacre, but Trump can leverage this tragic accident within minutes." Also, don't forget that the president's budget released in March has a 13% cut in the Transportation Department's budget. And remember Infrastructure Week back in June? Neither do we, because it didn't accomplish anything. Here's the president describing the problems. We're still waiting for some money or solutions.
For too long, America has poured trillions and trillions of dollars into rebuilding foreign countries while allowing our own country, the country that we love, and its infrastructure to fall into a state of total disrepair. We have structurally deficient bridges, clogged roads, crumbling dams and locks. Our rivers are in trouble. Our railways are aging, and chronic traffic that slows commerce and diminishes our citizens' quality of life. Other than that, we're doing very well.
Can never tell when he's reading from a prompter or just talking straight from the heart. No, just kidding. It's easy to tell when he's reading from a prompter. But let's get back to that. We'll push that aside for a second. We'll push the president's tweet aside for a second. Positive train control is expensive. We understand that, but I don't understand why the money hasn't been spent. Like, how is this taking so long? And Metro North, which actually had one of these crashes, now getting another extension for a year. Is it just the money now?
Well, I rarely agree with President Trump, but I do agree with much of what he said in that clip. Our infrastructure is aging, crumbling, unsafe, uncompetitive when you compare us to our international competitors. That is a problem for us today. It'll be an even bigger problem for us tomorrow. And you can kind of imagine an alternative reality in which the president came into office and began with infrastructure, which would have been a bipartisan priority. And if there had been a serious plan for investing in our future, I think many Democrats would have come on board, and the trajectory of this administration might have been very different. But instead, we've gotten literally nothing other than lip service to this priority. In fact, worse than lip service, as you pointed out, actual cuts in the investments that are necessary. And relating to the prior discussion, the tax bill will take away resources that might otherwise have been invested in infrastructure. So I hope that they pivot to making infrastructure a priority, but I'll believe it when I see it, because this administration has no credibility on the subject whatsoever.
Toward that end, Dominic, we talked in our last segment about after this tax bill goes through, they're already talking about cuts to the safety net. They're already crying poverty. Republicans in Congress, there's no money for this, there's no money for that.
Surprise.
$1 trillion for infrastructure? Can you see the Republicans finding $1 trillion to spend on infrastructure?
Well, I think we would agree that we would hope so, but politically, I just don't see that happening. The mayor referenced in our first segment that the president was playing to a populist theme but not doing a good job of it. And that tweet that he sent out which some have rightfully criticized him, is a perfect example of him trying to play to that theme in terms of pass my idea, and we can discuss the tragedy that I want to discuss, but we can't discuss gun control following a gun control strategy. The problem in America is it's with the people. It's with everyone that's watching the show right now. We don't, frankly, honor our elected officials that are willing to do something that's not very sexy in terms of politics. We know when there are third rails of politics that they better not touch: Social Security, Medicare, blah, 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 on and on. But when it comes to infrastructure, we don't really reward our elected officials that are willing to take that big bite and invest in something that's not sexy. We want to hear tax cut, crime, tax cut, crime, as infrastructure is becoming worse and worse by the day.
You know, Scott, we're already hearing from Democrats. We don't have an infrastructure bill in front of us. We don't know what the details would be, but we know that some Democrats are critical of it because there'd be public-private partnerships and it would be seen as something of a sellout to big business, at least in the abstract. If Democrats oppose an infrastructure bill because of that, are they at risk of putting themselves at the wrong side of this argument, at least where the public's concerned?
I think so, but I think this was a bipartisan effort, thought anyway. Initially, both Democrats and Republicans recognized needs for infrastructure, and why the administration didn't come out with this to try to get something done that really is required is inexplicable. More importantly, one of the things I think it's very important to remember is politicians don't get a lot for doing subways and water mains and bridges. It's not like opening up a new highway where they can stand there and do ribbons. And therefore, the subject itself, I know the mayor must understand this too, because as executives, getting infrastructure, roads and water mains and sewers is an expensive but very rarely looked at with a political eye.
But the opposite side of that argument has a lot of peril. Anytime Governor Cuomo tweets anything, read the comments that follow the tweet. Half of them are fix the subways. I mean, so when something goes wrong in terms of infrastructure, I mean, it might not be the sexiest topic when it comes to doing something positive, but if you have a negative issue there with infrastructure, you can be lambasted for it all day long.
I think that's right, and I guess I slightly disagree with Dominic and Scott in that I do think there is political mileage in investing in infrastructure. That's not the reason to do it. You do it because it's the right thing. But I can tell you, in New Rochelle, when we invest in our parks, when we upgrade our roads, when we provide for enhanced sewer lines, which feed into water quality in Long Island Sound, those are things that people see. They're a tangible return on the tax dollars that they send to City Hall. And I think they feel as though they're getting value in exchange for their tax money because there's a solidity and something you can really wrap your hands around. So I think the politics and the substance run together in favor of infrastructure, and that's why it's so mystifying that the federal government can't get its act together to do something that I think would be overwhelmingly popular.
Scott?
If that were true completely, then there would be a Congress over in my years, we had to beg, borrow, and steal for infrastructure projects in metropolitan New York. That includes all of us in New York, because it wasn't something that the Congress people cared about. And they just wouldn't move it forward. And we're talking about important mass transportation issues all across the board, and they just wouldn't move it. So I don't disagree with you. It's nice to open a new park or make it look good, but I'll tell you, trying to get money out of Congress it's really difficult when it comes to infrastructure going back 2 decades. Final point on that. Mario Cuomo. I'm losing it, right? Andrew Cuomo has blamed the legislature now for the subways.
Good luck with that. That's going to be a tough buck to pass. By the way, we ran out of time, so we don't have enough time to talk about Trump's rather tone-deaf tweet on all of this. It took him 10 more minutes to pass along his condolences on Twitter. But you know what? I'm totally okay not talking about his tweets. So let's move on. Up next, Bill de Blasio is in Iowa right now trying to raise his national profile, and he won't be the only New York politician heading there. We're going to take a look at some big names from right here that could be going there as they look for a route down to Washington.